Super Rugby, folks. How long since we've been talking about Super Rugby? It's been a wee while, but Super Rugby's come out with some law variations. We're going to go through those. The season gets underway in just under 2 weeks. Good time to be a rugby fan with Super Rugby getting back underway. I'm, for one, pretty chuffed about that fact. But yeah, we'll go through these law variations pretty quickly. You guys can let us know your thoughts on what impact they may or may not have on the game. Super Rugby, being Super Rugby, tends to add a few more variations than some of the other competitions around the world. But we'll go through them. And yeah, it's interesting because some of the variations that I've listed in black anyway are the ones that World Rugby had already decided to implement anyway. So it's maybe not as dramatic as all that, but I guess for Super Rugby fans who haven't been watching any European rugby over the summer, some of these law variations will still be kind of new, but yeah. The World Rugby ones are the things like the shot clocks for the kicks. So essentially you're going to be on the clock as soon as a try is scored or as soon as you point to the sticks, 90 seconds and 60 seconds, for a conversion or a penalty. And you're not going to be able to faff about. Essentially, you'll lose your chance to take a shot at goal if you take too long. That one seems kind of fairly innocuous. It's one of those ones that's been already in the laws for a long time, but the refs are under instructions to actually focus on it and enforce it, which is not a bad thing because it's a time where we're essentially all kind of standing around or sitting around doing nothing. The set piece, they've been under instructions to kind of hurry that up. If you've watched any of the Six Nations, you would have seen referees hurrying teams up, telling them you're not going to have these little conferences before line-out time. The guys need to get into position to set the scrum and whatnot. It's supposed to be within 30 seconds, basically. It's supposed to be getting underway. I think we've seen it kind of speed up a bit in the Six Nations and some of the European games. I wouldn't say it's a remarkable difference, but it's certainly one they should be working on. If you've ever gone back to watch games, from the 1990s, you'll see that the scrums were set like that. Now, obviously, safety has to be a factor. And I think they interviewed like George Bauer, one of the Crusaders props, who basically said, they've got to get it safe. They're worried about their necks, which is absolutely fair enough. But they can still do it safely faster than they have been doing it in recent times. So, I don't see any real negatives for that one if they can get things done fairly quickly and fairly safely. What else was there? The deliberate knock-on rule, which has been a bit of a bugbear with rugby union fans for a long time because so many times you see a guy going for an intercept with one hand and he doesn't gather it and they rule it as a deliberate knock-on, whereas you could find a highlight of a clip which was pretty much identical where he did manage to hang on to it and like it's an intercept try that goes length of the field kind of thing. The only difference being is not the action of whether he knocked it on, it's the result of whether he caught it or not. So it's kind of been a bit of a bugbear that doesn't sit very naturally, about the deliberate knock-on law. So they're kind of easing back on the deliberate knock-on law, that it's only if it's extremely cynical that you're supposed to be able to get kind of carded and whatnot for it. So it's supposed to be a little bit more intuitive. I don't think I've seen a heck of a lot of deliberate knock-on cards and whatnot in the European game in recent months. So that is promising. I think that one is one that genuinely causes people to get kind of pretty hot under the collar. Now, some of the changes that are more Super Rugby specific, because we love our specific variations, which is maybe not always the wisest thing to do when you consider when these guys who are playing Super Rugby have to go play test matches. They'll be playing under a slightly different set of rules. But it is what it is. They like to. They got a big NRL influence, to be honest. I mean, the Aussie market is very much competing with the NRL, which is the rugby league. So they do tend to take some laws from that and some guidance from that, I would say, which tends to be an influence. But one of the interesting ones is like the TMO has the power to upgrade a yellow card to a red card. And speaking of the cards, there's also now 2 kinds of red cards. So if you watched Super Rugby last year, you would have been aware that they had 20-minute red cards. So if you get a red card, you're gone for the game, but you can be replaced for 20 minutes. I feel like there's still people who didn't get that understanding. They think it's like a yellow card, like a double yellow card where you can just come back after 20 minutes. No, it's definitely not the case. The player who gets the red card is done for the game, but they can be replaced after 20 minutes. So the team comes back to 15 guys, but the guy who got the card is gone. So that 20-minute red card is still there. Now, one of the arguments against the 20-minute red card was, man, you could just go out there and try to kill somebody, like find their playmaker, their star player, just try to take his head off, and then it's kind of, they lose a player, you lose a player, so it's 14 on 14 or 15 on 14, but they've lost their key player, and then you get to be replaced after 20 minutes. Well, they've changed that for this year, and that they are going to have the 20-minute red card, so if you commit an offence worthy of a red card, you're still gone for 20 minutes, can't be replaced. But if your act of foul play is so egregious and deliberate, like you're just trying to punch someone in the head, then you're just going to get a straight red, and it's like it is at the international game. You're gone for the whole game, and you can't be replaced. So there's that kind of variation between most of the red cards, which I feel like we see is like guys standing too upright in the tackle, there's an accidental shoulder to the head or face-on-face contact. I think that stuff's still going to be 20-minute red. But if you just do something like a maniac and, really try to hurt somebody or just violence or whatever it is, then you're going to be straight redded. So there's that difference between these two cards. But also, they're trying to reduce the amount of time we spend faffing about looking at foul play reviews. So basically, the TMO is going to have the power to upgrade a yellow to a 20-minute red. So if they're looking at a clip of, there's a little flow chart that they've got which shows, when they review some kind of foul play, is it play on? Is it a penalty? Basically, if it's a yellow card, but not this kind of full red card level, so it's like one that's at least a yellow card, the ref is basically just going to give them a yellow. That's it, they're gone. But in the background, as the game plays on, the TMO then has the remaining, 8 minutes to review that yellow card to see if it warrants a 20-minute red. So they're going to be doing that in the background as the game is playing on. So instead of us sitting around making a cup of tea while they play 12 different angles and then have a big discussion about it, all that's going to be done in the background between the TMO and I think assistant TMO. So the ref just needs to conclude, is it at least a yellow but not as bad as a full red? If it's in that area, bang, you get yellowed, and then they'll work out the rest in the background if it's going to stay yellow and you can come back after 10 minutes. Or if no, it's worse than that and you need to be red carded for a 20-minute red card. So maybe that's a little bit more confusing because rugby is always trying to add more laws to stuff. But I do like the idea that we don't sit around for such a long time watching multiple angles of the same thing, because even George Bauer, the Crusaders prop, said he likes the TMO to take ages because it's a good breather. So that's not what we want. We want the game sped up. The last one was the halfback at scrum time. The defending halfback also can't come around the other position side of the scrum. They've basically got to stay where you would feel like the natural onside line is, basically in line with their props, I guess. So that's also one that's maybe going to give attacking halfbacks a little bit more space, or loose forwards if they've not got a pesky halfback harrying them down. So there you go, folks. Super Rugby laws, variations. Some of them are kind of universal from World Rugby, and then some of them are Super Rugby specific. What do you guys reckon? Do you reckon these are going to help? Do you reckon they're going to create further problems? I, for one, am always a little bit cautious about doing all the law changes because inadvertently, you change one thing and inadvertently it has a flow-on effect which you didn't see coming. That's often the way things are. Like the Captain's Challenge is the one that I always think of. Like, sounds like a great idea doing the Captain's Challenge. They got a chance to reverse any foul play or something that they missed, but then it was just abused by teams that were struggling with 5 minutes to go. Oh, let's chuck a Captain's Challenge at it. And, has that kind of unintended consequence. So it ended up kind of grinding my gears more than helping the game. But anyway, I'm not talking about that now. You guys let us know your thoughts about these ones. And, I'll talk to you guys again soon.